Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our reading of The Swiss Family Robinson. Today's chapter, Fritz Says Goodbye. Let's get started. All at once, a deep, fearful sound echoed through the neighboring woods. It made our blood curdle in our veins. We listened with straining ears, hoping it would not be repeated. With a shudder, we heard the dread voice roar again, yet nearer to us, and an answer pealed from the distance. We must find out who are the performers in this concert, exclaimed Fritz, springing to his feet and snatching up his rifle. Make the fire blaze, get on board the yacht, and have all guns in readiness. I'm off to reconnoiter in the canoe. We mechanically obeyed his rapid orders, while the bold youth disappeared in the darkness. After heaping fuel on the fire, we went on board and armed ourselves with cutlasses, besides loading all the guns, waiting in readiness either to land again or to quit the coast. We presently saw the home pack of our dogs, as well as Coco the jackal, come galloping at full speed up to the fire. The dogs planted themselves by the fire, gazing fixedly landward, with ears erect and occasionally uttering a barking challenge or suppressed howl. Meantime, the horrid roarings approached nearer, and I concluded that a couple of leopards or panthers had been attracted by the scent of the boar's carcass. But not long after I had expressed this opinion, we beheld a large, powerful animal spring from the underwood, and with a bound and a muttered roar, approach the fire. In a moment I recognized the unmistakable outlines of the form of a lion, though in size he far surpassed any I had ever seen exhibited in Europe. The dog slunk behind the fire, and the lion seated himself almost like a cat on his hind legs, glaring alternately at them and at the great boar hams which hung near, with doubtless a mixed feeling of irritation and appetite, which was testified by the restless movement of his tail. He then arose and commenced walking up and down with a slow and measured pace, occasionally uttering short, angry roars, quite unlike the prolonged phone tones we had heard at first. At times he went to drink at the brook, always returning with such haste that I fully expected to see him spring. Gradually, his manner became more and more threatening. He turned toward us, crouched, and with his body at full stretch waved his tail, and glared so furiously that I was in doubt whether to fire or retreat, when through the darkness came the sharp crack of a rifle. That is Fritz! Exclaimed everyone. Suddenly, with a fearful roar, the lion sprang to his feet, stood stock still, tottered, sank on his knees, rolled over, and lay motionless on the sand. We are saved! I cried. That was a masterly shot. The lion is struck to the heart. He will never stir again. Stay on board, boys. I must join my brave Fritz. In a few moments I landed. The dogs met me with evident tokens of pleasure, but kept whining uneasily and looking toward the deep darkness of the woods whence the lion had come. This behavior made me cautious, and seeing nothing of Fritz, I lingered by the boat. All at once, a lioness bounded from the shadow of the trees into the light diffused by the fire. At sight of the blazing faggots, she paused as though startled. Then she paused with uncertain step round the outskirts of the illuminated circle, and uttered roarings which were evidently called to her mate, whose dead body she presently discovered. Finding him motionless, her manner betokened the greatest concern. She touched him with her forepaws, smelled round him, and licked his bleeding wounds. Then, raising her head, she gnashed her teeth and gave forth the most lamentable and dreadful sound I ever heard, a mingled roar and howl which was like the expression of grief, rage, and a vow to be revenged all in one. Crack! Another shot. The creature's right forepaw was lamed. The dog, seeing me raise my gun, suddenly gathered courage and ran forward just as I fired. My shot also wounded the lioness, but not mortally, and the most terrific combat ensued. It was impossible to fire again for fear of wounding the dogs. The scene was fearful beyond description. Black night surrounded us. The fitful blaze of the fire shed a strange, unnatural light on the prostrate body of the huge dead lion and on the wounded lioness, who fought desperately against the attack of the four gallant dogs. The cries, roars, and groans of anguish and fury uttered by all the animals were enough to try the stoutest nerves. Old Juno, stanch to the last, was foremost in the fray. After a time I saw her change her plan of attack and spring at the throat of the lioness. In an instant the huge cat raised her left paw, and at one blow the cruel claws had laid open the body of the dog and destroyed the life of the true and faithful companion of so many years. Just then Fritz appeared. The lioness was much weakened, and we ventured to go near enough to fire with safety to ourselves. Finally, I dispatched her by plunging a hunting knife deep in her breast. Ernest and Jack were summoned from the yacht to witness the completed victory, and I regretted having left them on board when I saw how greatly the noise and tumult had alarmed them, unable as they were to ascertain what was going on. They hastened toward us in great agitation, and their joy on seeing us safe was only equaled by the grief they felt on learning of the death of Juno. The night was now far advanced, the fire burned low. We piled on more wood, and by the renewed light drew poor Juno from between the paws of the lioness. By the brookside we washed and bound up the torn body, wrapped it carefully in canvas, and carried it with us on board the yacht, that it might be buried at Rockburg, whither on the following day it was our purpose to return. Wearied and sorrowful, but full of thankfulness for our personal safety, we at length lay down to sleep, having brought all the dogs on board. Next morning, before quitting Pearl Bay, we once more landed that we might possess ourselves of the magnificent skins of the lion and lioness, whose visit, fatal to themselves, had caused such a commotion during the night. In about a couple of hours we returned to the yacht, leaving the flayed carcasses to the tender mercies of the birds of prey sure to be attracted to them. Homeward bound, sang out the boys as they cheerily weighed anchor and prepared to stand out to sea. I could see, though he did not complain, that poor Jack had not recovered from the boys' rough treatment and moved very stiffly. You must pilot us through the channel in the reef this time, Fritz, said I, adding in a lower tone, and then it is to be farewell, my son. Yes, dear father, au revoir, returned he brightly with a glance full of meaning, while he threw into his canoe a cushion and a fur cloak. Thanks, Fritz, but I'm going to honor them with the care of my battered bones in the yacht here. You are awfully considerate, though, old fellow, remarked Jack, not for a moment doubting that his brother expected him to return, as he came beside him in the kayak. Fritz laughed and commended his decision. Then, springing into his skiff, he led the way toward the open sea. We followed carefully and soon passed the reef, after which the boys were very busy with the snails, putting the vessel on the homeward course. Then, waving his hand to me, Fritz turned in the opposite direction and quickly vanished behind the point, which I afterward named Cape Farewell. When he was missed by his brothers, I said he had a fancy to explore more of the coast, and if he found it interesting, he might, instead of only a few hours, remain absent for 2 or 3 days. Toward evening, we sailed into Safety Bay. And that would be all for today. I'll see you all next time. See ya!